Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing quantitative easing, otherwise more simply known as QE. So, QE is a form of monetary policy implemented by the Federal Reserve Bank of the US, and this is where the Fed prints money to buy government bonds from banks. So, it prints money, buys these bonds from banks, which means it gives the money over to the banks who can then lend that money out to consumers. And when I say prints money, it doesn't necessarily mean the Fed actually physically prints bills to give to the banks. What usually happens is the Fed just credits itself the funds digitally and then gives this digital money over to the banks. So it basically creates this money from nothing. So what QE does is it increases the money supply and then it decreases interest rates, which encourages people to borrow money and for banks to lend people the money on easier credit terms. So, with more money being injected into the economy, it will then stimulate the economy for more people to spend that money, but it does also lead to higher inflation. So, when people now get these loans from the banks, they'll use this money and spend it however they'd like, which increases the prices. It pumps up these prices, which does in turn lead to higher inflation. So that would be one of the negatives of QE that basically always happens whenever QE is implemented, whether this be in the US or any other country. Brief history of QE. So it was first used in Japan in 2001. Japan's central bank is called the Bank of Japan. And Japan used this after a period of economic stagnation, and they basically just wanted to stimulate their economy. So anytime QE is used, the central bank wants to stimulate a country's economy, use QE to do so, and then it does stimulate the economy with higher inflation attached to that. But that's exactly what Japan did in 2001, and they've actually been doing this ever since. They haven't really stopped using QE, so they're consistently stimulating the economy over there, which, although Japan's economy is doing pretty well overall, some would say, they do have the highest debt to GDP ratio out of all the countries in the world by far. So that you could say that is one downside, and who knows, they might go into economic collapse in the future because of their high debt overall as a country. And then I did want to end the video by going over a brief timeline of quantitative easing that was used in the US. So starting from the beginning of QE, QE was used in 2008 to combat the financial collapse of the housing market, the 2008-2009 collapse. That's why QE was first implemented in this country. So it started in November of 2008. That's when the first government bond purchases from the Federal Reserve happened, and then this lasted till March of 2010. So they purchased basically every month, I believe, these government bonds until 2010, until the economy was doing okay to get back on its feet without injecting more money into the economy. So that did ramp up a lot of economic stimulus throughout the financial crisis back then. And then that was called QE1, so that was the first period QE was used during that time frame. And then jump over only a few months later when the US started back up again. This is called QE2, and this lasted from November of 2010 only till June of 2011. So it was a shorter period of quantitative easing compared to the first period. And then we'll skip about a year over to QE3, which happened in September of 2012, lasted till October of 2014. So this was at the time the longest period of quantitative easing. And this was also nicknamed QE Infinity because it really was open-ended. No one knew exactly when it would end. There were dates where they thought it would end, but then they extended it. So QE3 or QE Infinity lasted over 2 years. And then fast forward many years later until 2019 when QE4 started. So QE4 started in October of 2019, and this would have been right before the coronavirus pandemic. So we didn't know how bad coronavirus would be. I don't even think it was found yet in October of 2019. I'm not completely sure of that. But this QE was completely separate from coronavirus. It started a lot lower. It was only I'm not sure exactly how many billions, but it was lower in October of 2019 when they started it. And then when coronavirus, the economy kind of shut down, maybe early 2020, that's when it really started ramping up in terms of dollar buybacks of the government bonds to the banks. And currently it is still lasting, but the economy has gotten a lot more on its feet, so to speak. So QE has been tapered off in the most recent months in 2021 from the Federal Reserve, but there is currently no end date to QE4 at this time, and buybacks are still happening. They're happening in this case with repurchase agreements from the Federal Reserve. But yeah, that is just a brief overview of quantitative easing, and thank you for watching.